Chaos After Dark live? What a world that we live in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 84th rendition of your favorite podcast, sweeping the NFL charts, both domestically and globally. And I think the podcast whose tagline is most suitable for the upcoming holiday itself. Happy Thanksgiving from your friends here at the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. And your usual troublesome triumvirate is here once again to talk fun of football and the chaos. Joining me, as always, at the bottom of the screen, he is overcome whatever sickness, illness he had. What the heck was wrong with you, brother? But no, in all seriousness, Justin, glad you're feeling better, brother. Happy to have you back.
I forgot about that for a second. That was a rough weekend.
Well, was it food poisoning? What do we know?
It was, pretty much.
Fair enough. As an Albanian, I feel your pain. We get those. Every Albanian out there gets at least one every year, and every Albanian that's watching this, aka probably like 2-3 of them, will agree with that sentiment. So vast total majority on that one. Speaking of which, a man who is known for his fun and chaos on this program with a thing. I can't see the wording on top of it. I might need glasses, but I do see loved as a word in the background of him. The Podfather is there. Rick, are you feeling loved around this time of year, around the time to be thankful?
Well, I mean, yes, of course. It's a very important time to be thankful and be loved with that. But I have to ask a question. If that's the case, Jared, does that mean that I'm part Albanian then? Because that happens to me about once a year too. So I have to go look at my ancestry DNA because that's not on there.
I was going to say, you've done the ancestry test.
Every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just because you have a lot of food poisoning doesn't mean you're Albanian. But if you're Albanian, you get food poisoning.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
100%.
So every Albanian's a Balkan, but not every Balkan's an Albanian. Got it, because there's the Serbs.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
No, actually, we kind of do. We just don't like to. No, in all seriousness, jokes aside, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the show. Super early in the week, late in the day, of course. This is the third Chaos After Dark of the season, so congratulations for us, boys. But of course, we have to do an early episode because, guys, it's Thanksgiving. There's a Black Friday football game again. Is this a good idea? Probably not, all things considered. But the fact of the matter
they were
is,
expecting a better game. But
the marvel of medical science and what it can or cannot do for a man in his Achilles if it's actually hurt.
I'm not gonna do anything.
Wow. But in all seriousness, guys, as our usual chaotic intro is slowly starting to calm and simmer down, another rendition of the show. Week 11 recently passed us. Of course, if you actually tune into the show on a weekly basis, kind of hard to say weekly when it comes to such a quick turnaround on the episodes. But if you do listen to us on a episodic basis, we did just record a couple days ago. But of course, before the Thanksgiving games kick off, we have to do an episode. We have to talk fun. We have to talk our football. And of course, we have to do the hashtag SAOC pick challenge where they're getting spicy. There's a new number one at the top of the leaderboard, which I think, if anyone is following this week per week, I think you know who I'm talking about. But we'll get to that a little bit later on in the episode. We have a returning rant podium to finish things off. It felt really weird a couple days ago not having one, but we have one this time. But before we get to that, it's the return of the fun, return to the games. Our games master is back. He's ready to go. This is going to be better than Michael Jordan's flu game in the finals because Justin is back with some post-flu trivia. So, Justin, what do we got?
You've used that reference before, dude. Get a new reference.
That was when I showed up when I was sick.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, Rick. This is really a question towards your guys.
Oh no.
The Chicago Bears.
Yep.
Have had one Pro Bowl quarterback since 1985. Can you tell me who it is?
One Pro Bowl quarterback since 1985. Oh my goodness. Well, so conventional wisdom would tell me that it would have to be somebody who was terrible, because let's be honest here, the Bears have had terrible quarterbacks consistently. But see here, so here's the thing. I don't recall if Justin Fields was like a 12th alternate or something like that, because we've had very weird. I will still rant on this. Tyler Huntley in no way, shape, or form deserved to go to the Pro Bowl last year. But I'll have to get over that, I guess. So who would it have been? I'm almost thinking to myself. So, Jerk, is the answer this easy that it's Jay Cutler? Do you think?
I'm trying to think of what other garbage quarterbacks did this franchise have since '85 that it could
Rex
be.
Grossman.
You think old Rexy made one? He made a Super Bowl. I don't know if he made a Pro Bowl.
All less than sexy Rexy, you mean?
Yeah.
He might have. You never know. Golly. Well, again, it can't be somebody who's made multiples because.
Well, that barely exists in the Chicago Bears.
Well, I was gonna say Bears quarterbacks and multiple Pro Bowls. It doesn't happen that way. Honestly, no, it just doesn't happen that way.
Who's been Bears QB since '85?
Myra, but Rick Myra, I don't think was a Pro Bowl guy. So 85. See, that's the thing. So you're saying since '85, but does that include '85?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because '85 was Jim McMahon, and that was also the year of the Super Bowl shuffle. So that he definitely was the Pro Bowl quarterback for the Bears.
Rick, I don't know how much he started in his Bears tenure towards the end, but do you think Jim Harbaugh cheated his way onto the Pro Bowl? Like he put in fake ballots or something?
No, I don't think so.
Depends how many of the defensive calls you know.
That's true. Very, very, very true. You know what? It's okay. So in the time that Jay Cutler played in Chicago, there were still a bunch of other good quarterbacks in the NFC.
Right, Breeze and Rodgers.
Right, but it also wasn't a case where like a lot of them opted out. You started seeing a lot more opt-outs in recent years, and that's kind of when the funky guys started getting in to the Pro Bowl tenure. Which leads me to, I think, the answer, because I don't think it's Justin Fields, but I do believe it's Mitchell Trubisky.
Oh, Lord.
That's correct. Mitchell Trubisky is the only Bears quarterback since 1985 to make it to a Pro Bowl.
That's pathetic.
And the question is,
no comment because I can't say anything. It's not like the Jets have been lighting the world on fire in that position. But
no, but the question is, did he deserve it in the year that he made the Pro Bowl?
If you remember, he did have one really good year where they thought, "Wow, this was the right draft pick." I think it was Alshon Jeffrey and what was the other receiver?
I could have sworn he left already.
No, he threw the ball to Alshon Jeffrey.
Oh, what's his name? Cameron Meredith.
That could have been it. And he had a very good year. They made the playoffs.
He won the.
Was that the year the double doink?
Oh yeah,
it was. But I was going to say, Justin, he won the MVP award.
That was after.
I'm
pretty sure that was later.
No, that was later. Oh, the Nickelodeon Most Valuable Player. He didn't do that in the same season.
And I will say, Jay Cutler is a good shout because Jay Cutler was throwing the ball to Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, and they had a solid period there where they went to the NFC Championship game, I believe, one year.
Yes, they did. Then they also won a Super Bowl another year too. Yeah, that was when they played the Colts in that Rain Bowl that Prince absolutely slayed the halftime show in.
Well, so Rex Grossman did them no favors in that Super Bowl.
So the year that Trubisky got to the Pro Bowl, he threw for 3,223 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks, which is a little high for a Pro Bowl QB. Also ran for 421 yards and 3 scores. Completed 66.6% of his passes.
What season was it?
2018.
28. Wasn't that one of the Rodgers getting injured in Green Bay seasons?
Could have been.
It's let me see how Green Bay fared that year. Green Bay was 6-9-1, so yes, that was a Rodgers, because that was Mike McCarthy's last year because he got fired.
Yeah,
and then
so
Joe Philbin replaced him.
What a time! So you get Rodgers hurt. Drew Brees, I know, was like fine that season. I'm sure he was named to the Pro Bowl again because why name anybody else to the Pro Bowl apparently?
Well, obviously,
and. Like, aside from Brees, who else was in that conference at that point? I mean, I know the fraud in the Pacific Northwest probably made it, but
in 2018,
yeah.
Well, 2018 is still pretty recent. So Prescott, I think. was Dallas's quarterback at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia made the playoffs at 9-7 with Nick Foles and Carson Wentz there. Well, the Rams were 13-3.
I was going to say that was the Jared Goff year.
That was the Jared Goff year, yeah. So I think he made the Pro Bowl, but he didn't take part in it because they
went to the Super Bowl, yeah.
Right. So that makes sense. I don't know if Russell Wilson made the Pro Bowl. Oh, he did. Yeah, of course he did. So yeah. But again, what is the Pro Bowl nowadays, anyways? It used to be an excuse for a trip to Hawaii. Now it's an excuse for a trip to Orlando, which nobody wants to go to anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Pro Bowl really fell off when you started taking it away from an actual location people would want to go to, and they have it in Orlando now. They've had it didn't they have it in Arizona for a couple of years if I'm not mistaken?
Something like that. Yeah, it's like Survivor. I understand the appeal of being in Fiji, but when you're in Fiji for 19 consecutive seasons, I mean, I get it. The taxes to shoot there are very, very low, and the government's very friendly. But come on, who wants to survive Fiji for the 8th straight year? Really, come on now.
Yes. That's a good question. So while we go through the discourse of geopolitical politics in the state of Fiji, ladies and gentlemen, good job there on the trivia, Justin. Always appreciate it. Do you have one more, or are we moving on?
That's it.
All right, we move on from as a trivia, but I know we have one more game in store. What do we have? Is it a fact or fiction? Is it a would you rather? Is it a fourth one that we have created unbeknownst to everybody out there? No, it's not. We only have 3 at the moment. Everything else is pending construction.
It's called Is This a Hat?
Is it?
No, it's a basket, but it could be a hat.
Oh,
see?
I like it as a hat.
Yeah, I like it as a hat too.
I didn't have another game, but if you want me to come up with one, I can.
I think my pre-show question of is Zach Wilson the worst number 2 draft pick of all time?
Yeah, I didn't do any research into it, but maybe.
All right. My bad, Justin. Rick made me think that you actually did have one.
Well, I made a joke about saying would you rather be a Jets fan or get waterboarded? Yeah, it's not good right now for me, at least.
I think for the purpose of the holiday, it's either would you rather be the Jets fan or be the turkey being cooked on Thanksgiving?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. I was more so thinking would you rather be a Jets fan or you have to have Pepto-Bismol the entire rest of the day after you eat?
Oh boy. Speaking from experience there, Jerk?
No.
Okay.
No.
He just said that he's get food poisoning all the time.
Yes, but never at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean,
you didn't specify.
We all thought the Dame George was going to get you, but surprisingly, that made it fine for you. I contend that on your next Ophir week, you have to do the Sunshine sub for the Trevor Lawrence. Let's see how I do with avocado from Subway instead.
I am not having avocado, so we'll come up with something else.
All right, fine then. Well, if Justin's got no more games left, I guess it's time for a fact of sorts, if you will.
Indeed. And, Rick, what is it? What is the mind-blowing fact that you're going to just absolutely destroy our brains with?
So, you gave me a very good idea in pre-show to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving in a certain way. We all know Thanksgiving is the seminal holiday that's the last Thursday in October, which marks the run-up to the Christmas season, if you will. But it wasn't always the case that Thanksgiving was the last Thursday in November. In fact, there was a time when it wasn't even in November to begin with, period. So back in the pre-colonial days of the United States, Thanksgiving was actually celebrated in the middle of October in order to correlate with Canadian Thanksgiving. They wanted to try and have the holidays in a similar fashion. It wasn't until President Abraham Lincoln in the mid-1860s was the decision made that it should coincide with the November date, which is when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. So that is when it became the last Thursday in November after Abraham Lincoln made that so. And actually, the story goes that there is somebody known as the mother of Thanksgiving, and her name is Sarah Josepha Hale. And Sarah Josepha Hale actually holds a very interesting spot in history too, because she wrote to Lincoln and Secretary of State William Seward in 1863 to basically say, make Thanksgiving a national holiday because the Civil War is raging on and we need something that will heal our nation. So that kind of made that. So Sarah Josepha Hale, incidentally, was the writer of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So you're getting a multitude of mind-blowing facts today. And the last one here is that after Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday of November, along came Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who decided in 1939, hey, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's make it the third Thursday in November instead. And his idea for doing this was because let's add 7 more days to the shopping season. It's the end of the Great Depression. Let's try and revitalize our economy, get people shopping again because things are, the economy's coming back. Well, what happened was he upset 2 very important groups. Well, one less important than the other one. The first important group, which is less one, is college football coaches. Because obviously college football coaches scheduled their weekend Thanksgiving days around that. So then it became a midweek game in 1939. So that really upset them. The second group that he upset, which actually is very important to this, the calendar makers. Because they had already printed out calendars in years in advance. And now it was all wrong because FDR decided in 1939, let's change Thanksgiving from the 4th to the 3rd Thursday of the month. Needless to say, 1942, he decided, let's put it back to the 4th Thursday, and that's where it's been ever since. So he learned from that mistake, but not from the polio, and so therefore he figured it all out. So there you go. Happy Thanksgiving from your mind-blowing fact emporium right over here.
Wow.
Look, I got to give respect to FDR. He made a misstep there, yet he still eventually got his 3rd and 4th terms. So,
well, he
got his 4th. I don't know which term that was.
He basically invented Black Friday. Like that's
yeah.
That's
he invented
the most
Black
American
Friday
thing I've ever heard.
Exactly, he invented Black Friday on a mishap, and by doing so, he really riled up a bunch of people who make calendars for a living, which is just the saddest job I think you could ever have, and killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Ironically, we eat turkey, so there you go. There's the bird. There you go.
Jesus, this is the most politically tied episode we've ever had, and it's just literally talking about Thanksgiving.
Gobble gobble.
Did not expect it to go this far. So, no. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think if you're sick and tired of the political talk that happens at your Thanksgiving dinner this year, well, have some very very calming talk, I guess. In this
put this on in the background and see what happens.
Put this on in the background. Although I think this is where all the politics will end. I would assume.
Wow.
I don't know. Well, pending the rant podium, we'll TBD on that. I don't like that look.
I do have some notes on Joe Burrow's foreign policy stances, so we might have to go into that at some point. But he's not playing football, so what else is he doing with his life right now?
Justin, do you know Rick's tells, right? Every single time he kind of does the look away and the starts to suck his teeth, you already know it's something we don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Well, speaking of things people don't want to hear, we're going to be talking about some things that NFL fans will be not happy to hear because certain teams not doing the hottest right now. Actually, before we get to that real quick, this will be the one thing we kind of touch upon going into it because, we will be picking the games later on with the hashtag SAOC challenge. And because he wasn't here a couple days ago for the most recent episode, I actually do want to get Justin's thoughts here real quick. So Justin, we could kind of tie this scene, even though there's more topical stuff to talk about. But we just want to hear, because we didn't get your thoughts on it. What were your thoughts overall about the whole Joe Burrow situation where he ends up getting injured and we know he's out for the rest of the season for Cincy?
I mean, obviously it was deemed that he could play. I don't know the validity of the doctors. Obviously there's been some issues with team doctors maybe making calls that are more favorable for the team than the player. That being said, I mean, I could walk into a store and buy one of those wrist things. Maybe his wrist was bothering him, a little bit. He slept on it wrong or whatever. So he had one in his closet and he put it on for the plane ride so he'd feel better during the game. You can't tell me that one is related to the other. It could be, but it might not be. I like to take people's word for it. If the NFL comes out with an investigation and says, hey, the Bengals screwed up, they should have reported this was a real injury, this were to happen, he probably shouldn't have been playing, that's a lawsuit in my mind. Joe Burrow is going to make a lot more than the $200 and something million that he signed for. But, until then, it is a freak accident in my mind. I'm going to try and be positive. And hopefully he comes back because football's better when he's on the field.
Absolutely.
You're not wrong about that. I mean, I think, especially in Cincinnati. I mean, God knows what else are they going to do. Although I might be in Cincinnati come next week or the week afterwards. So I don't know, we'll see what happens there. I was invited potentially if FC Cincy goes to the MLS Cup and hosts the final championship game to head out there for the weekend. So we'll see. I might be doing a live hit from TQL Stadium with the crazies, if you will.
Nice. I was going to say, can we get like a live hit outside the Bengals stadium or something like that too?
No, I can't. I can't wade through enough trash to get there. You know, all of a sudden I'll just see Jake Browning lying on the parking lot outside. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, you're meaner to Jake Browning than me, and normally I'm the one that's mean to the mid/lower tier QBs in the NFL. Jeez, Rick.
We'll give him a chance, but not that big of a chance. You know.
Well, you know. Clearly, Rick is not high on Jake Browning because Justin, we all know. Rick told me this last week. I don't know if you caught this. I don't know if I think it was at some point early middle of the episode. If you went back to rewatch it, Rick is going to get back here very soon on the Tanner McKee hype train. Justin, he's going to root for his guy here as we have an injury to Joe Burrow. Lamar even got dinged up last week, even though he's going to be good to play the next game. Like as guys are going to start to maybe get hurt or are just going to sit out the last few games of the season, if it doesn't matter, Tanner McKee season. It's back on track. All
I'm saying is the Browns signed Joe Flacco to the practice squad. Who else is left? Who else is there?
I think you'd be shocked.
Chris Strevler? Like, come on now.
So as Rick awaits Tanner McKee's one opportunity, never forget, I think the most shocking draft pick in the history of the show, the first round pick used on Tanner McKee in our last mock draft. So for every QB selection we hit on CJ Stroud, we missed on another one to save
well, you know, we try. We have some fun.
We try indeed. Yeah, fun football and chaos, ladies and gentlemen. So let's continue with a little bit more of the football talk, guys. So some news has broken today that we definitely want to hit upon here in a couple of moments. I just want to do. It's been a little bit since we've been able to talk about this because we did the hot seat last week. We talked awards the week before, so it's been a couple weeks. So now I feel like we can kind of look back at the Week 11 games and kind of pick apart certain stories and certain things that may have stuck out to us. In terms of what happened in results and maybe trends that we are noticing happening. And I think for me, I'll bring this up because this has to do with one of the premier teams in the league, of course. And this is a team that most people would expect, hey, this is a really good offense. And they are a really good offense. But the last few weeks, they have been struggling to be a really good offense. And I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. So aside from giving Justin his upset win that week, it totally took a blow to the Chiefs in the win-loss column, which they are now, I believe, second in the conference, if I'm not mistaken, behind the Baltimore Ravens, who are now first place in the AFC at this moment. But the big thing, guys, and I actually didn't know this until I saw this stat, I think it was earlier today. So the Kansas City Chiefs, they were up 17-7 at the end of halftime yesterday, right? 0 points in the second half against the Eagles. Eagles are a good defense. You think, that's happened. Go to the week before that to the Miami Dolphins game in Frankfurt, Germany, and it was a 21-0 lead at halftime. Dolphins scored in the second half. The Chiefs did not. And then against the Broncos, even the week before that, Mile High City in Denver, Colorado, it was 14-9 at the end of the first half. Denver didn't score. So now 3 straight games, 3 straight second halves, the big zeros on the scoreboard for the Kansas City Chiefs in the third and fourth quarter of the last 3 games. I don't know if Patrick Mahomes has ever gone 3 straight games with having a scoreless half in his career before. So there's that. I don't know. I'm not saying that's a definitive stat. I'm saying I'd be surprised if this was not the first time.
So it gets worse, though. I know the stat is that it's 0 points in the second half of the last 3 games, but if you go even further back, against the Broncos in that 19-8 win they had the week prior, they only had 1 touchdown in the second half. They only scored 7 points. It was a Pacheco reception from Mahomes. The game before that, which was the Chargers game, or I think I flipped them, whatever it was, but the Chargers game, it was the Pacheco pass for the touchdown. But the Broncos game prior to that, they only had 2 field goals in the second half. So it's very weird to say this, but ever since that Minnesota game, which is when they had the last time they had double-digit points in the second half, they have just slumped. This is not the Kansas City team that we all know and expect to be dominant every single year. Something is definitely off with this team. And in a similar way, something's off with Philadelphia too, because yes, they're 9-1, but are they convincing 9-1? Do you think? I mean, I don't really see. I don't really know. I mean, I think to me, like, there's something that's. I think a lot of what it is too is that their wide receiver core that Kansas City has is just not good. Like, you can only rely on Travis Kelce so much. Karma's not the guy on the Chiefs in this one, guys. It's just not that. And I understand they have a lot of running backs too, like aside from Pacheco, but Jerick McKinnon has kind of been quiet. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has fallen off the wayside. Mecole Hardman got hurt last night, so Mahomes doesn't have anybody he can really rely on. And when you don't have that, even if you try to call your own number, you can't do it all yourself, no matter how much he wants to.
Look, let's face it. I mean, since the Tyreek Hill trade, there has not been a legitimate receiving threat there. I mean, they have all these guys that are fast, that can, do all these moves once you get the ball to them in space, or if you get the ball to them in their hands. But there's been drop issues. They're a top 3 team in drops this year. There's obviously issues getting open. It's not like Mahomes is, missing that much. It's something that we've seen coming. Let's just be honest. It's not like Marquez Valdez-Scantling was this sure-handed receiver in Green Bay. He was known for getting open down the field on a fly route and dropping Hail Marys from Hall of Famers. That's what he did. We can't sit here and say I'm surprised that he dropped that ball yesterday or 2 days ago, or whatever it was. It's not a surprise. So, look, I expect them to go heavy into receiver territory this offseason. I don't know if it's something that they could fix so immediately. Maybe they go make a play for Mike Evans or Devontae Adams if he gets traded, although I can't imagine they're going to trade him within the division. And they're going to have to go out and get someone, because outside of I can't remember his name. Not Scott. Who's their other young receiver? Rashee Rice.
Rashee Rice, yeah.
Outside of him, I don't really see a number 2 receiver on that team, let alone a number 1.
No, and that's what's so weird too, is that even when they had Tyreek Hill and even when Patrick Mahomes was a rookie, their number 2s were either like Albert Wilson's or Demarcus Robinson's.
It was Mecole Hardman, who again I didn't think was all that great to be. Like, he would get open sometimes. They had Byron Pringle. He would get open sometimes. Mahomes would hit these guys, but let's face it, you had Tyreek Hill always getting open. You had to double him at some point, which left Travis Kelce always getting open. Those are 2 guys that are impossible to guard, let alone when they're on the same team. And then the other guys filled in the gaps. That's all you needed.
Yep.
Yeah.
They didn't even have the run game that they have now. Pacheco's been excellent for them.
Yeah.
Jerick McKinnon is doing what Jerick McKinnon normally does. Last year, I think, was an aberration for him. He had a great year. He's part of the reason they won that Super Bowl. He was fantastic. This is more of what I expect from Jerick McKinnon. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been falling off for a long time. These are not surprises to anyone that's been watching this team. So it's kind of up to me. And listen, I can't sit here and say that management has done a poor job, because realistically they fixed a major issue, which was that defense. That defense is now one of the youngest and strongest defenses in the league. They've done an excellent job with that all the way around. They're going to have to focus on the offense again now. They're going to have to get legitimate players. And I don't want to see you try and repeat the Tyreek Hill experiment. You're never going to get a Tyreek Hill like that again. Like, maybe you'll get lucky eventually, but you want to capitalize now. Yeah. Let's see some bigger bodies again. Let's see guys that can go over the middle. Let's see guys that can go over the top.
Yeah.
Because Mahomes, you owe Mahomes that.
Yeah, and you don't want to make the mistake of just assuming that, like, even if there is a strong finish to the season, which we don't really have any what's the word I'm looking for? Any proof, right? That will end up being the case with these guys. Like, they might come back and be decent in the next game, but they're not going to be world enders for the rest of the season. They're at best going to be
they're
fine.
7-3. They're among the best teams in the NFL.
No, but I'm not talking about the Chiefs, Justin. I'm not talking about the Chiefs as a whole. I'm talking about these receivers in particular. I'm focusing on the skill position right now. I'm saying that even if these guys finish off the season decent enough, there's going to be a wholesale change on this team. And we've seen this with the Chiefs before, because you mentioned the defense. which even going into last season, which a lot of people thought, I'll admit myself included, was going to be a bit of a step back for the Chiefs. We saw the beginning of it, and then it really bloomed into like what you said this season through plenty of draft picks invested in this defense to get to a point where they are now. And
Can I point one thing out also?
Yeah.
Just want to give props where props is due, because I've watched about 3 or 4 full Chiefs games this year. Trent McDuffie is everywhere all of the time. He has been so good for them. He's been so good. I've never seen a cornerback literally be everywhere on the field. He's getting sacks. He's covering guys in the back. He's getting interceptions in the backfield. He's tackling running backs in the middle. He's everywhere. It felt like the announcers called his name on almost every play.
Yep, kids dynamics at the very least, and there was a lot of hype for good reason coming out of the draft for him. And I think we all agreed that was an amazing pick by the Chiefs as well. So there's that. But we've seen it from the Chiefs before. Like if we just have to temporarily go into the future for a moment what they will try to do to fix this. We've seen them fix problems before where, remember, after the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, heavy investment into changing the offensive line. It took a season. They lost in the AFC title game the next year, but then they came back to win it. And the offensive line is still a strength. You look at the defense, which has been an investment after that Super Bowl loss to the Bucs, they started to lose like a piece here, a piece there. Still, for the most part, kept their main guy in Chris Jones, but they built out and they drafted young. Again, you mentioned McDuffie is, I think, the pure best defensive draft pick. I think Nick Bolton deserves a little bit of credit as well. I think he's been pretty good for them as well. Even very good.
He's been injured, so I can't really.
No,
he's everywhere the other day, but
injuries for him. But when he's out there, we've seen him been making plays in his young career so far. So he does make a difference. I think if we want to talk about looking ahead, I think they will end up finding a solution to this in some way, shape, or form, right? They've shown us that when they focus, when they pinpoint on a certain, whether it's a position group or a side of the ball, they are very good at fixing problems they have. I think they've proven that. But we can praise that as much as we want. That's going to be the future. Right now, like Kadarius Toney is not going to magically become a 75-yard per game consistent receiver. Like you said, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who when he was signed from Green Bay, was kind of just like a token signing, because remember that coincided with the original Tyreek Hill trade. Like they just wanted a guy who could just run deep at some point. And that was, I think, also part of getting Mecole Hardman back at the deadline or close to the deadline of just like, hey, let's get some familiarity back. And then you see that not working out. You see the young receivers they've drafted the last few years, very limited, I think, in touches, but they haven't made any of the game-breaking dynamic plays that we would have hoped. And then ultimately you have a situation where just it's not going good if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. And if it's not Travis Kelce being thrown the ball, we saw it in week one. There is fear that these guys are just going to drop it when Mahomes drops it in the bucket. I want to give a shout out before you go here, Rick, to Patrick Mahomes, because if in any way, shape, or form he had wanted to be upset, and we know he was upset about that miss by Scantling, he could have made it vocal. All he did was he literally said in his post-game presser, it's like, maybe I could have, thrown the ball just a little bit shorter, so it would have been at a better angle for him to catch. I know you're supposed to do that. I know you're supposed to stick by your teammate publicly. I think we've seen plenty of quarterbacks that wouldn't do that with that amount of class. Yeah. I just want to give Mahomes a shout out there, because when these guys actually he took it all. He even said he could have done something better on that when he threw up 90% good ball. Yeah. That's insane. So I just want to give Mahomes that shout out. Real quick.
I think MVS is the Tyreek Hill at home version. It's not the guy you want, but you got him. So I think it works out in that favor. And the Kadarius Toney signing worked for the punt return in the Super Bowl. But let's be real here. There's nothing else really to it. Now, I'm curious to see if Kansas City is going to do what we all discussed and try and go wide receiver in the draft, because the problem is that there are guys, once you get past Marvin Harrison Jr. and then further down in that, a lot of the guys are kind of in that same Tyreek Hill mold, because that's really the key. So Justin, to your point, is what you said too, which I think is a huge part of contention there. Why would you try and strike lightning in the bottle twice? I mean, there's no reason to do that.
Look, if you like players of that mold and they fit your system, and I understand you're not trying to get the next Tyreek Hill, you're trying to get the next receiver, and these are guys that are young and they're fast and blah blah blah. Let's get some guy. When was the last time you saw a Kansas City receiver jump over the top to get a ball?
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
How many of them can you throw corner end zone shots to?
But the point I was trying to make was that if the Chiefs are smart, because I looked quickly at the rankings, Johnny Wilson from Florida State is 6'7" and a top tier wide receiver. How about him on the Chiefs?
Are they going to be able to get him though?
He's like maybe like the 6th or 7th best wide receiver in the class. So he could probably still be there by the time they're picking. He might fall to the 2nd or 3rd round because, all these draft boards make no sense anymore. But it's
Well, also to be fair, I mean it's not early in the season. College football is kind of almost done here to an extent. But in that same thing, once we go through the combine, once we go through this, like we might be saying he could be a 2nd, 3rd rounder right now. This kid has a good combine. He has a good pro day. The scouts are going to make him a mid-tier 1st round pick, and then if you're Kansas City, you may not get that guy. Like that's so. I definitely get what you mean. Like I'm with you both. Obviously, they should look to invest in. I mean, I feel like in other situations we would be able to say that a team should even look to the trade or free agency market. But I think we learned from this past the end of the preseason going into this year, obviously with the Chris Jones hold down, the fear there, and then the reworking. Mahomes already reworked his deal and then restructured everything. Like this is not a team that has the cap flexibility to get a guy that can necessarily do it. Because honestly, I mean, I know they're better than what we thought this season, but I still have massive questions of them going into 2024. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we talked about what Mike Evans' future is going to be. What is Chris Godwin's future going to be on that team? And if this was a team that had a better cap situation, I would even say maybe the Kansas City Chiefs should look at a Chris Godwin as a guy to bring in there. He's not maybe he's not a universal number one, but I think he's better than number one than what they've had since last season.
Yeah, I also think too. It's we do a lot of hindsight and second guessing in a way, but it really is. Why wouldn't you go get a better receiver to pair Brett Veach with your Travis Kelce's? Or, in other cases, why wouldn't you get a better backup quarterback, Joe Douglas? Or why don't you just get out of Chicago, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus?
Let me just say this. This situation in Kansas City is dire as well, because I don't know if everyone's listening. Both Kelce brothers are talking about retiring.
Well,
a lot.
Yeah.
This offense without Kelce, I mean, I don't want to scare any Chiefs fans here, but it's not looking great.
Yeah. No, which leads me again to say that the very worst possible thing that could happen to Travis Kelce is, there she is.
Yep. This guy.
Once an episode.
Well, but again, I think so. So here's the thing too. I think the Chiefs are going to be okay though, because the rest of that division is in such flux that the Broncos are at 5-5 and they're in 2nd place in that division. Like,
look, I expect it's not like those. I mean, I understand that all 3 of those teams have not performed up to what we expect them to.
Brandon Staley didn't answer my email, by the way.
Brandon Staley, I think, is going to be out at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Sean Payton is finally starting to have some sort of effect in Denver.
Yep.
To the point where they've beaten the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't discredit the weapons and pieces that they have in Vegas. And they are going to have a new GM, and they're going to have, possibly a new coach. There should be some hype to say, listen, there's an issue here. At the very least, there's an issue on offense. With arguably the best quarterback that we've seen in a long time, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but if you're have the same record as Cleveland right now, you got a problem. Just saying.
I don't know, man. Cleveland's been really good. That defense,
they have been, but
that's a championship winning defense with a XFL playoff game winning quarterback situation.
But that's the thing too, is that if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and the AFC has run through you 5 years in a row or however long it's been, and you all of a sudden now you have the same record as a Browns team that, as we learned in the last week's show, hasn't won their own division more recently than the Houston Oilers have. That's not ideal.
Well, to be fair to the Chiefs,
the Browns, I get the Browns have a great defense, but the Chiefs, you expect consistency year in and year out.
I mean, I will say this, to be fair to Kansas City, when you mentioned the home situation, they won the AFC title game in Cincy last year.
Right.
So this team has won on the road in the playoffs before, I think, or maybe not Cincy. I think one of the Buffalo games was in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. So they've gone on the road to defeat people before, if they've had to.
But I think they've hosted the AFC title game year in and year out.
I'm pretty sure they won the AFC last year because
they won the AFC, but
one less game.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything went through there. But I do believe they've won games on the road.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's more what I confused the team, but like they've won in the playoffs on the road before. I'm sure they've had to at least the one time. So because they haven't always had the first seed. So
they've hosted it, I think, 5 years in a row.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when the Tennessee Titans somehow make it one year. But anyways,
I believe one of the years there was a Patriot in Foxborough. One of the years they lost.
Yeah, I think for the very first year, I think it was in New England. But still, the fact that they've made it 5 years in a row is telling.
And it's a difficult thing to do in football. Look, I'll say that at the end of the day, I think, and to your point, Rick, like this season, the AFC West looks like a bunch of jamokes. But if there's a new head coach in LA, if there is stability in Vegas, which says a lot, but there's just good stability there, maybe a new QB. And if in Denver they have something cooking, and again, the Broncos, we want to talk about success with wide receivers like Cortland Sutton might have a very strong end to the season. And they drafted well, actually, in the wide receiver position as well. And they're going to let go of someone who isn't doing all that much in Jerry Jeudy either. So, and remember, like, I think the Broncos in particular, I don't know what the cap situation is off the top of my head. T. Higgins is going to be a free agent, man. And that I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos are chomping at the bit. I think a lot of teams are chomping at the bit to add a T. Higgins to their roster. That would be a big mistake for Kansas City it wouldn't be a mistake on their part. But what I'm saying is that it would be rough for Kansas City to have this issue in the future, and their division can get better. I know, like Justin said, this season, it's kind of sort of going how we expected here and there, but it was more so last season where we were talking about this being the division of death in the NFL. Clearly, the AFC North took that this year and be like, excuse me, I think you're talking about us just a year later. But the AFC West over the last 2 seasons underperformed. Funny enough, the Super Bowl winner last season came from the AFC West, that being the class of the division. It's going to be testy, and you don't want to put anything at risk if you're Kansas City. So obviously this is something that there are no short-term solutions to in terms of external. All that comes in the offseason. All that comes in March and April. Right now, you got to hope that guys just play better than average, if that's possible on a consistent basis with these guys. Again, various receivers on this team have had issues. I think I even saw the stat. I forget the number, but I think a fifth of Mahomes' incompletions this season have been because of drops, or maybe it wasn't incompletions, maybe of his incompletion percentage. Like a lot of that has been due to just drops by his guys, not even just him missing. So it's a very telltale sign. And look, like drops kill it. When before LaFleur got there in Green Bay, I think 2 seasons in a row, Aaron Rodgers, wide receivers, the down years with McCarthy, they led the league in yards lost due to drop passes. Drop passes literally lose you games, as we saw on Monday night. So yes, that happens, to say the very least. So that, I think, was the big thing, because it's always something to talk about the contending teams in this league, and when you have a team like Kansas City, a offensive dynamo for over the last half decade, to say the very least, when you see them struggle, things happen. So that was the thing I wanted to point out. Is there anything, before we get to the more current news, boys, that you guys want to point out as a notable headline from Week 11?
I mean, look at Houston, man. This past week, CJ Stroud did not have his best game, and they still found a way to make it happen. And you want to talk about wide receivers? Tank Dell is something, man. He is electric. And all it does is it makes this week's game against Jacksonville even more intriguing, because Houston wins that game. They're tied with Jacksonville for the lead with the head-to-head in the division. They'd be first. So interesting, to say the least, for that young team that's, I think, playing over their expectations, but they're not afraid of anybody, and that's something that's really refreshing for that franchise, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And especially with that quarterback. And again, CJ Stroud, him walking in, he had a lot of things to put on his shoulders, right? You had the struggles that the Texans have had for the number of years now, with the constant revolving door of head coaches there. And the struggle of what their former franchise QB was supposed to do for them and was unable to do, in part because of his own stupid deeds. You have that. You have the pressure. This gets talked about every single year. Ohio State QBs, can they translate to the pros? You have 2 curses on you, and this kid is just holding it all up and is doing a fantastic job. Like there, and you mentioned Tank Dell. That's 3 games for him, because he went well over 100. I think he had a 140, a $140 or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's his 3rd game of over 100 receiving yards this season. And I think especially the last couple of weeks, he's becoming one of Stroud's go-to guys in the 4th quarter when it comes to just getting first downs and putting them in position, whether it be a touchdown at the end, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, he got the game-winning touchdown against Tampa, if memory serves, or one of the fourth quarter touchdowns against Tampa, if it wasn't the game-winning one. And then he made at least one play in the Cincy game that got him a first down. And then in this past one, just absolutely feasting on the Cardinals. Secondary is what I'll say. Very, very much so, Rick, because the Houston Texans, man, like we gave our award candidates before. Again, unlike a lot of people, I'm not opposed to there being ties with some of these awards, with the minor awards, not the MVP, but with the lesser awards. Who says no to a Dan Campbell and D'Amico Ryans co-coach of the year? Well, like, they both deserve it this year. They both very much deserve it. Turning around those two franchises, to say the very least. One with 60 plus years of pain, the other one more like half decade or so in terms of recent stuff. Justin, I don't know if you had a point. I have one more point to bring up, but I want to throw it over to you in case you had a team or a specific situation that you wanted to highlight from last week.
Well, we know it's not going to be the Jets. What about the San Francisco 49ers dominating?
Yeah, very much worth it.
That bye week was a godsend for them. That's really what they needed. Brandon Ayuk looks like he's finally fully back and healthy and doing well. Deebo Samuel came back. That team was firing on all cylinders this week. Good for them. I think they deserve it. It was surprising that they dropped 3 games in a row like that. So for them to come back and just absolutely dominate against, let's face it, it is a pretty good Bucs defense.
Yeah.
Just absolutely dominated.
Yeah. And I think to add to your point of them coming off the bye so well, Justin, is that this is a team, look at their next 3 games. Their next 3 games might A, decide the division, and B, keep them in contention in the NFC hunt, because their next 3 games are away against Seattle this upcoming Thanksgiving, so in a couple days from now, in Philadelphia in a NFC title game rematch on a Sunday 4:25 p.m. game. Oh, how I wish that would get flexed. And then in San Francisco on December 10th, again, another 4 o'clock afternoon game against the Seahawks. This 3-game stretch could ultimately give them the division, and if they can upset and beat Philly, that might put them in a good chance to still be within striking distance of the top seed in the NFC, which, this 3-game stretch, all things considered, like we have to wait and see to say if it did cost them. They're very much still in it. And for a team like that the last couple seasons they've been used to making second half runs, I think we're about to see another second half surge, man. Because this San Francisco team, it's going to be very dangerous to say to what they could do over the next couple of weeks.
This is a very interesting schedule. If you look at it, they have 4 divisional games, and they play 1 game against each of the top seeds in each conference.
Yep. Baltimore and Philly, and a interesting game towards the end of the season, the penultimate week of 2023 for San Fran, where they take on the Commanders in a game in Washington, which, you beat them, you keep yourself in a good spot. Continuing, maybe you're within you're within a game. It's all ultimately dependent on the situation. But San Francisco, after that 3-game stretch, a lot of people were down on them. They still have life for that number 1 seed in the NFC, man.
Yeah, I think too, to your point, just about that, Washington's not a team that's going to roll over. So they're always the tough out, no matter who they're playing. I think you saw that with this Giants game they had. They were down big, and they still were clawing back and trying to find a way to come back and win that game. But the 6 turnovers there just absolutely killed them.
Well, let me also say, if you can rush the passer even a little bit against the Commanders, you're probably going to win.
Yeah.
And that offensive line is a disgrace. I thought the Jets' offensive line was bad. I got to stop taking shots at them today.
Well, the Giants' line's bad too. Tommy DeVito's still getting sacked.
The Giants had 5 sacks in the first quarter, I believe.
Yeah, it was rough, to say the very least.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
the legend Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. And it really speaks to the performance of Sam Howell, who's currently leading the league in passing yards.
Yeah.
Which is an outrageous stat.
Well, I wonder what that would have been if in Vegas in the beginning of the season, what the betting line was on Sam Howell leading the league in passing yards.
If by chance you are listening to this podcast and you are either that person who took that bet or the guy that took that bet, please, we will interview you and ask you what was going through your brain when you made that bet. I need to understand the psychology of making that decision.
I don't know what's going through the brain, but I can imagine what's going through the system with a lot of alcohol potentially.
Right? maybe. You think they went 0 for 4 in like preseason, and their friend told them like, "Hey, take the Sam Howell leading the league in passing."
Maybe they had to. That was their danger witch, if you will.
Maybe we'll do that next season.
Yeah.
Integrate some of that for the 2024 campaign.
Right.
So that's interesting to say the very least. The last point I was going to bring up, I'm sorry, Justin, I do have to mention this game, but don't worry, I'm not going to mention too much the team that ended up losing this game. But the Buffalo Bills getting a win in Week 11 to get above 500 at 6-5.
They couldn't even give Stephon Diggs a freaking touchdown to help me win my fantasy game.
So as Justin suffered on all fronts there, let me go to the Buffalo Bills, which I know we've highlighted this before, but I just want to bring this back into the people's minds here. So this Sunday, the Buffalo Bills take on the Philadelphia Eagles. The week after that, they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Both of those games, away games, one in Philly, one in Kansas City. Then at home against Dallas, then away in Los Angeles to face the Chargers, and then at home against the Pats, and then away in Miami to end the season. Actually, so it wasn't here, but I did bring this up to a friend of mine where this is a very back and forth schedule for the Bills going into the end of the season here, boys. And there's zero consistency whatsoever for them. They don't have back-to-back home games at any point to finish off this season. And I know we can make the hardy har joke, the Chargers game might as well be a home game, but they're still having to travel to Los Angeles after a home game. So there's that. And that's a Saturday game as well. So those Saturday games get a little bit funky, to say the very least. So, like, what do either of you take anything from this win against the Jets, that they got this win and they needed some positive momentum going for them into what I think we could easily say is probably on paper one of, if not the hardest ends to a season here? Because you got, Justin was mentioning top seeds. You got the top seed in the NFC. You have a team tied for the second seed in the AFC. Two teams tied for the second seed in the AFC right now between the Dolphins and the Chiefs. And you have a Dallas team that could be very formidable. And the Chargers, for all we want to say about them, they could put up points. That game could easily become a shootout. So,
well, the indictment on that, though, is that even with this win against the Jets, they're still a half game back of the last wild card spot in the AFC, and they're still a game and a half behind Miami for the division. So, I think the biggest thing that you hit on, which is accurate, is the lack of consistency. Because yes, they got a nice win against the Jets, but Philadelphia is coming around. So will they be consistent again, and will they have a bad performance? Will Josh Allen succumb to the pass rush of Philadelphia, and then they'll be 6-6, which is no better than Indy, who's on a backup quarterback, Denver, who's Denver, and Cincinnati, who's on a backup quarterback as well. So, I mean, I think, to your point from earlier this season, we're looking at this as now Buffalo is in a critical venture. They have to win a majority of these games, and because the schedule is so difficult, not even that New England game's a walkover for them. And so, we'll see what they're made of. If they can rise through it, they're going to be dangerous come postseason, but they might be too battered because this schedule is not doing them any favors.
Yeah, I mean, look, their schedule has not been the most difficult, I want to say, coming up to this point. They had some rough games, but I mean, let's look at teams that have a winning record that have been on their schedule right now. It's the Dolphins, who they beat, the Jaguars, who they lost to, and the Bengals, who they lost to. They also lost to the Broncos, and they lost to the Patriots. They could have very easily lost to the Giants, but they didn't. It looked like they had a chance of losing to the to the Buccaneers. Buffalo, it does this thing where they come out, they are incredibly dominant in the first few games, and then turnovers and things happen, and all of a sudden they're not that great of a team, and there's issues. I mean, for a team with, what do they have? 19 total takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
Their turnover, you know what their turnover differential is?
It's definitely, it's got to be negative. I think Allen's leading the league in turnovers.
Zero, yeah.
It's zero.
Yeah.
You can't have that. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's multiple games where they have 4 turnovers.
Right.
You're not going to win that way. You're just not. I don't care how explosive your offense is. And now to me, what it looks like they're getting is becoming an issue is they're getting away from their best players.
Mhm.
I mean, that Denver game. How many yards did James Cook have?
I don't know.
He fumbled in the first quarter, and they didn't play him for almost the entire first half.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what they would have done if they would have actually ran the ball with their best player?
And that's poor coaching.
I get that turnovers are an issue there. I do.
Yeah.
He had one fumble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stephon Diggs, over the last 3 games, do you guys know what he's averaging?
Not good. What, like 70 a game?
It's yards? No, I don't think he's had 70 yards in any of those last 3 games.
Who?
Yikes.
Yeah, he's had. Hold on, I'll tell you right now.
And I said 70 because 70 for a player of Stephon Diggs' caliber is supposed to be a bad game. You look at 70 yards for Stephon Diggs, and that's an off day.
Yeah.
He said 27, 34, 86, 70, and 58 in his last 4 games.
He has a right to be upset.
Yeah.
He has a right to be upset.
Yeah. And 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion.
That's bad.
Right.
His targets are down.
Yeah.
Everything is down for him.
So let me also say this too, because you're right. Stephon Diggs has not had a very good season. Remember,
that's the thing. He was coming into that 5-game stretch.
Yeah.
He was top 5 in yards, top 5 in receptions, and he was top 5 in touchdowns.
Yeah. And now it's all just fallen off. Justin, you made a point about the Niners having the bye week, and it was a godsend for them. Buffalo's bye week is not a godsend for them because here's the thing. If they lose this game to Philadelphia this week, they fall to 6-6. Look at what's happening the week after when they're on bye. The Dolphins have the Commanders. The Steelers, who are above them in the wild card spot, host Arizona. Cleveland has the Rams. The Chiefs are at the Packers. And then you have Cincinnati and Jacksonville. But even the Colts are at the Titans. So they could literally lose 2 games by losing to the Eagles and not playing and watching every team ahead of them jump further ahead the next week. And then that hill just becomes a lot bigger to climb for this team that had Super Bowl aspirations going into the season.
And now are trying to become a wild card team. Which
the issue for them is to be a team of this caliber, but have this many mistakes. And now you do not control your own destiny and have the caliber of schedule that you have coming up. When you play the cream of the crop of the NFL over the last few years, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Up and coming teams that have won Super Bowls, teams that have been to Super Bowls, teams that are perennial playoff teams with top quarterbacks. This is not, if they can't get a handle on this now, it's not going to be pretty.
Right.
Yep.
Now, maybe this is a trap game for the Eagles in Philly, coming off a huge win against their, hated Super Bowl opponents of last year. I'm not going to say. I personally would pick the Eagles. But they come out of the schedule 500 and have to go into Kansas City and then have the Cowboys, whose team has a ton of turnovers this year.
Yep.
I don't know what you're gonna do.
I feel
like that Cowboys and Bills game is almost like the Spider-Man meme of them pointing at each other because you got teams that get a lot of turnovers, but their QBs also cough the ball up a lot.
I will say this too. This is one of the reasons why I love the ESPN playoff machine because it's live, and so I just did it now. The only 2, if you go to the pre-packed scenarios, there's only 2 scenarios in which Buffalo makes the playoffs: defensive rank, because their defense is one of the top defenses in the NFL still, somewhat, and away team. That's it.
Yeah, because they have a better away than home.
One is by talent and one is by pure chance.
Yep.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good for this squad.
And I think part of it, and I know we brought him up last week in our hot seat meter, but Sean McDermott, you used your bullet. You fired Ken Dorsey. I always talk about GMs only have a certain number of bullets in the chamber because you can only have so many head coach hirings. And I've been proven wrong before, and I will be proven wrong again. But, realistically, you should only get one, maybe a second chance at most, depending on what happened. If you're Sean McDermott here, I know Brian Daboll left on his own volition, right? I understand that. But you just fired the guy that you picked to be the guy after him. I mentioned this last week, Rick. These head coaches have a significant freaking say in who their staff is. If not, maybe even in certain instances, probably the not final call over the GM, but an equal call compared to the GM, because they believe that they know who they want to run this stuff. If you fire Ken Dorsey, yes, you just had the first good game, but if you don't match up to the Eagles offensively, if you don't match up with the Chiefs offensively, if you can't outgun Dallas and the Chargers, who can both put up points, and if you can't beat Miami, if you miss the playoffs, I'm sorry, Sean McDermott, I think because we mentioned a lot of different things as to why they're at this. I think Sean McDermott's been outcoached by a lot of guys this season. I think he has. I think that his team overall has just been outworked and outcoached. And for a guy who a lot of people, revere and respect, and yes, he helped turn things around in Buffalo. The bloom comes off the rose eventually, man. Just because he helped you get to this point doesn't mean he's going to help you take it any further. And I brought this up. You mentioned my take in the preseason, Rick. I brought this up during the preseason. That is Sean McDermott someone who we need to question his long-term viability? And I think he did just sign a contract extension in the offseason. Rick, we spoke about the ownership.
Nothing.
Yeah, contracts are about as good as the paper they're written on, depending on who the ownership is. And you've spoken about the Pagulas on this podcast before, Rick. They will fire him. They don't care.
So Sean McDermott ranks second in the wins list in Buffalo all time. He's 67-40. Marv Levy's 112 wins is the number one. You know what the difference is? Marv Levy got to 4 Super Bowls. Lost all of them, but he still got to 4 Super Bowls.
Yep.
That's the big difference.
Yep. And McDermott, you made a AFC title game. And
0.
I think depending my last point here, depending on what the matchup is this year, if we have 1 or even 2 teams in the AFC title game this season that are making it equal to what Buffalo has, and if one of them surpasses that, so let's say hypothetical situation here. Let's say the Chiefs lose before the AFC title game. I know, wild situation, but just stick with me just for the scenario, right? Just for this specific situation. If 2 teams make the AFC title game that haven't been there the last couple of years, and that means one of them has to win it, you're telling me Sean McDermott in the same amount of time, in a greater amount of time than a Kevin Stefanski, than a Doug Peterson, than a Mike McDaniel, in that situation, they make it to a Super Bowl before you? That's a massive demerit. That is a massive demerit.
Mm-hmm. The only saving grace, I think, if McDermott, as you said, if McDermott does not get there, is if it's Kansas City or if it's Baltimore, to your point. Because if it's anybody else.
But is it a saving grace? I mean,
it's not. But again, the Pagulas are that weird and wonky that they could look at that and say, well, Baltimore just got things right this year. You'll be fine. You're going to have another year. Or it's Kansas City. We understand. You'll be fine.
No, so that's the thing, though. I mean, as an owner, as someone who's I mean, I'm not an owner, obviously, but in my mind,
you own Vegas hypothetically. So let's talk about this.
In my mind, there's only so many bites at the apple. You know what I mean? There's only so many times you can not get over the hump. I like the GM. I think he's put together a good roster. Why aren't we winning?
Yeah.
I understand there's been injuries. I understand there's been issues. We had a bad run game. All right, you got James Cook. He's actually rushing pretty well. We revamped the offensive line. You still have a pretty good quarterback. Why can't we run the ball anymore?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, real quick, Justin, just in terms of the current general manager spot. I believe this is his first head coach, if I'm not mistaken. McDermott's his first guy. I think Rick mentions the weirdness of the Pagulas. If someone's going, it's going to be McDermott before the general manager. Unless the GM
I wasn't. I'm talking about if I'm the owner, I'm talking to McDermott. The GM's put together a good team. I'm not saying the GM's getting fired.
Okay. No. I want that portion. I thought you were talking to the GM.
No,
first.
you go. In my mind, the first thing you do is you go to the coach.
Yeah.
You say, "Listen, we got a lot of Pro Bowlers. We just gave Josh Allen a lot of money. He's played very well in the past. His turnovers are up. We're not winning as many games as we used to. What's the issue? Because it's not like we weren't winning with these players. We were winning with it. Let's face it, pretty much this core of players. They didn't lose that many guys.
Yep.
What is the issue here, and why aren't we moving forward? Why are we moving seemingly backwards now?
So a lot of that might have to do with the play calling, because I remember Leslie Frazier resigned in February, and McDermott's the one calling the plays on defense.
Yeah, I mean, defense has been an issue for them, but I don't think it's the issue. I think the issue is the turnovers, and I think the issue is the offensive inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not, a 15-play, 80-yard drive, or even if it's a a 5-play or a 3-play 80-yard drive, it's either a turnover or a 3 and out. There's no in between.
Right.
Bass has got a few field goals, but I think it's more in terms of they've had good field position sometimes. They've played the Jets twice now. Their average starting position must have been at least the 40-yard line. So, I don't think that it's on. I mean, again, they have their issues on defense. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think that's where the issue lie. I think that every time that their defense makes a stop, we're saying, all right, is Josh Allen going to turn the ball over now?
Yep.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah. No. We're not disagreeing. It's just,
no, I know. I'm just exclaiming.
Yeah. It just goes to show, man, windows, they can close it fast in these sports leagues. And if the Bills' current window, just the current one, like not permanently, but the current one, is it shut? And we thought it was still open. Who knows? Like we need to see. I think this will certainly be an interesting conversation we have. Maybe like Rick mentioned, after the next 3 weeks, because I think the next 3 weeks, I mentioned before with the 49ers, the Seahawks, and what dwindling wildcard chances they have at this point in regards to 2 games against San Fran, and they're one in the middle, where while San Fran has Philly, Seattle has Dallas in the middle of that. So there's a lot of big 3-game stretches for teams coming up that's going to decide. I think we're going to start to get close to division winners. I think we're going to start to get extremely close to a more crystallized playoff picture in 3 weeks' time. So I think we're going to have a new in-depth combo in 3 weeks' time once we get to that, because I think we're going to start to see the playoff spots a clinching over the next little bit here. So fantastic stuff there, boys, going over some of the highlights of Week 11. Guys, I have a question for you. Since the start of 2023, no, my bad. Since the 2022 season, I forgot a year. Since last season, how many touchdowns has Kenny Pickett thrown?
I saw this. It's not a lot. 8?
The square root of 2, I think.
So he has thrown 13 touchdowns and 13 interceptions since last season, right? I don't know how many interceptions this guy threw from last season. Matt Ryan from 2022 to now has thrown 14 touchdowns. Matt Ryan has not played this season. He's retired. So last season, despite being old, broken, and crippled, and playing for the Colts, and benched, probably twice actually, Matt Ryan has thrown more touchdowns in a terrible season for him in the swan song of his career than Kenny Pickett has over the last 2. So naturally, what do? You fire the offensive coordinator, whose name was even being chanted to be fired at hockey games, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you know it goes deep in that town. The Pittsburgh Steelers have fired Matt Canada. The Pittsburgh Steelers did something that they haven't done since literally the 1940s, and the guy that got fired there was, I think, partial owner of the team. So what a way, to say the very least. The Pittsburgh Steelers finally make an in-season coaching change. So aside from hell freezing over, gentlemen, this could be something that the Steelers desperately need. This offense does not look great, to say the very least. Sub 2,000 yards on the season to this point for Pickett. Only 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, which is not really saying anything positive. His completion percentage is down. His QBR is down from last season in a significant way. It's rough, to say the very least. Yes, blame Canada it is, and they fired him. So the Steelers. Will this make a difference? Who knows? Justin, your reaction. I think you were the first one to text in the chat, if I'm not mistaken.
As soon as I saw it, I texted you guys.
To when he got fired.
And yet somehow they are still winning games, right? I mean, it's a testament to, I guess, the rest of the coaching staff, because, I mean, as of right now, they're in a playoff spot. So they control their own destiny. And by the way, we were just talking about turnovers. Do you guys know who leads the league in turnover differential? The Pittsburgh Steelers. They are plus 11.
It's a weird league.
Yeah. So it's as poor as maybe Pickett has played. They don't turn the ball over that much. They get more by a lot. They get a lot more turnovers. They have 19, I believe, forced turnovers to. I'm sorry. They have. 19 forced turnovers to the 8 total giveaways. So. Look, they're well coached. The defense is still that defense that we've been fearing for years. They're a tough team. They're not a team that you're just going to sit here and roll over. I mean, maybe there's one blowout every now and then, but for the most part, They still have a leading defensive player of the year candidate. They still get after your quarterback. They still force turnovers, and they're still in games in the fourth quarter. And that's really all you need for a chance for a Mike Tomlin team to win. He's no Ben Roethlisberger, but he's doing enough for them to win games.
He's not even Tommy Maddox. Let's call it what it is here.
I think they would prefer the corpse of Roethlisberger at this point.
Well, look, somehow, some way, they are still in the playoff hunt. And look, again, it might be a case where we have to start looking at these offensive coordinators and saying to them, like, why aren't you turning your guys loose? Like, why are you handcuffing your guys? This is not just Matt Canada. This is, Nathaniel Hackett as well. Like, why are you handcuffing your guys and why are you not, letting them loose, letting them try and do things?
It's not the same.
I know, but I hate Nathaniel Hackett, so for me it is. But but look, like this was the change that I think Pittsburgh needed because their defense is so good, and Mike Tomlin knows how to coach a good team. It's just when that third part doesn't really add up, you have to get rid of that guy. And I think Chris Boswell summed it up best. You didn't win that. You had nothing to do with winning that game. So, you had nothing to do with the fact that they're. Yeah, you had nothing to do with the fact that the Steelers are the 7th seed right now in the playoffs. It's not Matt Canada's doing. Because remember, the one big win that everyone remembers was because Kenny Pickett audibled out of the play call and did it himself and made the decision. And there you go. That was the win. So Pickett is a young quarterback who is struggling. And I think he will have an opportunity to showcase himself in this week when they're playing a Bengals team that is banged up. Let's call it what it is. They're not fully healthy, and they're not going to be very good on offense with Jake Browning there. So,
listen, the Kenny Pickett-led Steelers are a road favorite in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Is that something you thought you would hear this week?
No.
Nope.
But it just tells you how the state of football is. I mean, some people call it mediocre, Tom Brady, and some people, call it fun.
I really wish I had checked that line before the Canada firing. I want to see if this has affected and impacted in any way. How much you want to bet that game was even going into it before he was fired?
Probably wasn't because of the Burrow injury.
No,
I know, but still.
Yeah.
There actually was one game that was even going into tonight, and it flipped. And that was Arizona and the Rams.
By half a point.
Yeah, by half a point.
I've never seen that before.
I know. Very weird.
I just want to point out another thing. You guys know how many games the Steelers have left against teams with a winning record in 7 games?
Well, 2.
It is exactly 2. It's their last 2 games. They play the Seahawks, who are 6-4, and the Ravens, who are 8-3. They play the Bengals twice, who are 5-5. The Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Colts, who are also 5-5.
I think it was. I think I saw it wasn't a stat, but it was just like a thing to point out where it's like aside from the Seahawks, like every other QB for the most part that the Steelers are facing, like it wasn't their team's start. Well, aside from the Seahawks and the Ravens, every other QB is just like a random that team is throwing out there at this point.
Especially the Patriots, man.
If you're the Steelers, this is very interesting. We might see 3 AFC North teams make the postseason, and one of them is not who we thought that they would be. To say that, or one of them that we thought would be there is not making it.
They are not who we thought they were.
Yeah, they certainly are not.
Injuries happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the most sacked quarterback since you've come into the NFL.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they are. Hot take here, guys. Hot take. The Bengals need to protect Joe Burrow. Just a hot take.
And you thought they would have done that because of all the money they put into it in the last offseason to get guys on their offensive line. But
and that's, if you remember, the second offseason in a row that they did that.
Yeah.
Yep.
They threw money at guys and it didn't work out.
Yep.
And then on top of that, do they still have the same offensive line coach there? Is it a coordinator thing? Is the scheme wrong? Maybe. What is? You got to pay. Go find an investigator. Pay him $10 million to find out why you can't keep your $200 million quarterback from standing in the pocket without getting hit.
Yeah. But that $10 million would have gone to T. Higgins. So, you're just shooting yourself in the foot even more.
It's not a salary cap thing.
No, that's fair. It's a construct.
Yeah.
Hey, how many times have I said it? That's gonna be our first shirt. The salary cap is a social construct because
for the record, by the way, their offensive line coach is Frank Pollock, who has been there since 2021. He was there in 2018 for a season, and then left in 2019 and 2020 to go be the O-line coach for the Jets.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, that checks out now, doesn't it?
It all makes sense, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
All right. Last bit of news that we got here today: Darius Shaquille Leonard is no longer an Indianapolis Colt. Who had that on their NFL Week 12 bingo card going into Thanksgiving? Once again, I want to shout out the guy because I actually just saw a clip. He was giving turkeys to people in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I think it was in Indy, or maybe it was somewhere. He was giving turkeys out today or over the weekend. No, I think it was today. Before he figures out he's released. Just props to the guy. He deserves a lot.
Do you think he stopped and put all the turkeys back and was like, "Give me back my turkeys. You people don't deserve it." No,
I hope not.
I don't think he did.
No. And he gets released by the Indianapolis Colts. It was very like it happened so suddenly. I remember when I sent it over to you guys, like Rick was just like, like there was no other reaction to have because you're talking about a guy who, since he's entered the league, defensive rookie of the year, his rookie season, 4-time All-Pro, multi-time Pro Bowler. This guy has had some success, has had some injury issues the last 2 seasons, more so only played 3 games last year, played in 9 games this season. But as we discussed pre-show, not an every down player the same way he was at the peak of his powers. But still, I think a guy who at the age of 28 is still pretty good and can still contribute. Justin, you mentioned that he now has to clear waivers. We will see if he does so. Probably will, because I don't think a team is going to pay him his current contract to the end of the season. I could see him potentially clearing
$1.5 million.
Yeah, I could see I could see this clearing, and then he's going to sign on with someone relatively quickly. I think because I thought last season there was a deadline to sign with a team to still be eligible to play in the playoffs. Maybe I'm confusing my sports. I don't know at this point. I'm tired and hungry. But let's move on to the shock itself. Guys, Rick, I'll throw it to you first. The surprise of Shaq Leonard, Darius Leonard, whatever the hell we want to call him at this point. I know it's Shaq, but I'm just saying. Shaquille Leonard being cut by the Colts just seemingly sort of out of nowhere. And then what team you think he's going to end up going to? Or maybe not that, but who you think he could help?
So to Justin's point in pre-show, when we asked about what his percentage of snaps that he's played, it's a tick under 70% this time around. Exactly. A tick under 70%. So I feel like in this regard, this is one of those scenarios where it's just a matter of surprise, because he was a leader, but he was a very, very good player for them in the scheme of the last few years. But as we mentioned, he's not an every down guy anymore, or at least not in Indianapolis' system. EJ Speed, their 5th round pick, is getting a lot more reps because he's shown that he's a lot more of a, I guess what Leonard was back in 2018, 2019. So it's very surprising. And again, it's surprising for a team that's still somewhat alive in their division. I mean, Jacksonville's 2 games up on them, but the Jaguars have not looked that impressive consistently. Like the Titans game's an aberration. Look what happened the week prior against the Niners. So, the Colts still had a shot for something. Where will he go once he clears waivers? Well, we just talked about them. And I know that they're calling in reinforcements like Blake Martinez is there now, but Pittsburgh could use him. Quan Alexander's out for the year. So is Cole Holcomb. Though that's a team that could definitely need a linebacker of sorts, of the mold of Leonard. And you know what? Another team, Dallas. Leighton Vander Esch is out for the whole year. So, there are teams that will definitely need him in some capacity. And it's surprising that, he's not going to finish out his run. He was a very highly touted pick, very, very good tackler in the Bobby Okereke mold. And Indy, I think, whiffed. I know he's not the every down guy he used to be, but he's still a leader in that clubhouse, and that hurts. Team.
And you mentioned him being the leader. Like, you kind of have to wonder, without his presence, how is that going to affect them going into even this game? Where you mentioned, Rick, they're sort of on the bubble, and maybe if they make a miracle run, they could surprise some people. But and you mentioned Bobby Okereke, who they let go. It was either this offseason or even the one before it. So that's 2 teammates drafted, I think, in the same draft class, if I'm not mistaken, or at least a year apart at most. Like these are 2 guys who are stalwarts on an Indy defense, which the last couple of seasons have been respectable and fine. from 2019 to 2021 has helped them get some big upsets in the AFC over the last couple of years. And now you miss a guy that's got to hurt their odds going forward, especially I think this week against the Buccaneers team, who Justin mentioned earlier. That's a pretty good Buccaneers team, at least defensively, and the offense can explode here and there. There's that, but I'm not going to take up too much of Justin's time. Justin, your thoughts about the releasing, and Rick listed a couple teams there. What do you think about his potential destination?
It is a surprise to me, and I like all the teams that you threw out there, Rick. I just want to obviously throw out another one. How about in the division? Why not go to a team that's in a playoff spot in your own division that you're going to see at some point? The Jacksonville Jaguars could use some help, I'm sure. It doesn't hurt. I don't think they play them again this year, but there's spots for veteran leaders on playoff teams, and that's why it didn't make a ton of sense to me for a team that's 5-5, vying for a playoff spot, to release, even if he's not playing. It's not like you're not going to be on the hook for his salary anyways. Once he clears waivers, you're on the hook for that $6.5 million.
Yep.
So I didn't really see it. I don't know if he's a free agent next year or if it could have been a salary dump for the following offseason, but it's not really a move that seems to make much sense to me.
Right. And then again, it's Jim Irsay, and Jim Irsay's done a lot of questionable things over his entire tenure, really, but especially the last few seasons and how he's handled stuff with players. Just to kind of round it out, you mentioned, I think every single team that's in playoff positioning, and especially the strongest contenders, are going to be definitely reaching out on phone calls over the next 24 to 48 hours, however long it takes before he ends up clearing waivers here. You mentioned Jacksonville there, Justin. I also think Miami could be a team to try to make a shout at him, because this is a team that the weakest part of their defense, if you had to pick out a weakness, which has shown to be flawed at times, is probably the linebacking core. Their defense has some talent. The defensive back crew, Jalen Ramsey, just had the best game of the season recently against the Raiders with some of the plays that he was making. I think if you're the Dolphins, you need to seriously consider adding Leonard over there to that linebacking core. But again, the Jaguars certainly in consideration.
What about a team that we said that they lost a linebacker? Nick Bolton just went on IR, didn't he?
Kansas City Chiefs, they could definitely, that doesn't hurt. Make it overkills. Let San Francisco nap him up, and they have a linebacking core of Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Shaq Leonard. Like, my God, that would be absolutely devastating. I want that to happen just to ruin everyone else's time.
There's so many teams that he can go to that make it an impact, even as a guy who's doing 60% of the snaps.
Yeah,
absolutely. Imagine on third down, a fresh Shaq Leonard. What offense wants to go up against that?
He still has like 2 or 3 plays in him where he can wreck a team's possession. He can wreck a team's drive. And I think, to the point, I think he should end up going somewhere that the burden is lesser on him. I'm not saying he still can't do it, right? I'm all for I'm all for guys not being counted out at the age of 28 in sports. And the NFL is one of the unique ones where 28 is kind of considered almost the end of your prime, weirdly enough, in this league. I think that he still has a couple plays in him, and if he goes to the right situation where it's not necessarily a heavy load on him, but he makes a couple plays, has a solid playoff run for a team, that can do a lot. Think about, he ended up getting hurt in the Super Bowl, but think about if Odell had never torn his ACL in the Super Bowl. He tore it up with the Rams. He was amazing in the playoffs. He could have been a Super Bowl MVP candidate, if we're being honest. He was the one tearing up the Bengals early in that game. Like, Shaq Leonard, if he puts together a little bit of a run for himself, could find himself in still a pretty good spot with even more suitors in the offseason after this year. So there's that. That is all the biggest news that happened there. Nice, kind of a rarity for us to be able to talk about a player transaction this late into the season. So we will take that with wide open arms. Enjoy that, to say the very least. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Thanksgiving edition of the hashtag SAOC, a pick challenge, where Rick, Justin, and I go throughout the NFL landscape. We look at the we look at the case of games that we have, and we think to ourselves, what do we want to pick from 4 to 1? Most confident, least confident, most points, least points. Oh, dear God, why are you doing this to me? Where, in the words of Rick, you're 1 point. Doesn't matter. We go from a 4 to 1 basis where we go in a serpentine draft order to make our selections. We all we all must pick at least one upset pick. Maybe we'll all meet up at a mall to do the show one day. We all must make at least one upset pick. The lowest pick it can be for any of us is a 2-point pick. You can pick a tie, but it must be used with your 4-point pick. But you get the positive there. It gets upgraded to 5 points. So there's that. Us doing this pre-Thanksgiving, that means we have a full 16-game slate to go into, guys. I think it's the first time we've had the full 16 since what, like week 2, I think? Or week
something like that, yeah. Week 3, maybe.
Yeah, week 2 or week 3. So full 16 for us. That also means it's going to be a full 4 games for the pirate himself, Billy Shakes. We'll know what his picks are at the very end of the challenge. I think I've handled almost everything except for the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that the way that we are deciding our upset picks is the lines that are given to us by our friends at...
So I don't know if did you guys make this correction last week?
I did. I made it.
No longer Caesar Sportsbook.
I made it.
It is now ESPN Bet.
There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still our friends, I would hope.
They want to give me a call. I'll be happy to talk to them.
Corporate shills, you know.
Yeah. Well, I am one automatically. So
well, there you go.
That being said, let's get down to it, boys. Rick, actually beforehand, because we didn't get to do a proper standings update before last week's picks. So give the people what they want to hear, which is a pick challenge points update.
So going into last week, the pick challenge read as follows. This is going into last week, Justin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Jurg had 58 points going into last week, and he got 5 points because he correctly had Dallas and Buffalo, putting him at 63, which is where he currently resides. I had 68 points. I was in the lead by 1 over Justin. I had Miami and Detroit correct, so I got 7 points, so I was to 75. Our Pirate mascot missed on the Minnesota-Denver game, so he is still at 30 points going into this week.
Oof.
And gentlemen, the reign of terror has ended. like Ridley Scott's Napoleon.
Or Robespierre.
Exactly. The reign of terror is over
action.
because thanks to a perfect week, 4-0, earning the extra point, Justin leads in week 12 with 78 points. So it is 78 for Justin, 75 for myself, 63 for Jurg, and 30 for Billy, which means basically that he can't catch up for, S and Gs or whatever. So Justin, as the leader, will pick last among us in this first go around. And Jurg, as has been the case since about week 9, or actually week 6, I had the numbers inverted there for a second. You will pick first. So, whenever you're ready.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to catch up to you, Rick. I'm in striking distance. If I just stop being screwed over, it would be nice. All right.
Pick the Bills.
What? No, I'm not doing that.
You don't want to be screwed over.
That's true.
Oh, man. No, you can pick them if you want.
No, I'm not going to. I already told you that.
There you go. No, yeah. Sure. You surprised us before, buddy.
It's true.
You literally had me make one of your picks one week.
I know.
That is true.
I was cocky.
Oh, my God. I think, that pick lost. So
did.
I had accomplished that job that week. All right. So we didn't hold on. Before I make this pick, did we ever formally agree on Rick's idea regarding the Thanksgiving Black Friday games?
We never formally agreed upon it because Justin had his reservations about the Black Friday game. He didn't want to be stuck with it, which honestly, now that you're in first place, you can kind of negate that whole thing completely. So.
Basically.
That's true. I mean, it's up to you guys. There's a lot of good games on Thursday, so I wouldn't want to necessarily tell you can't take all 4 of those games. Really, all prior Sunday games.
Just make myself either extremely depressed or happy right now.
Yeah, it's up to you. I probably, if it's available, I would probably take 1 or 2 of these games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the first year we're doing this, so why don't we just leave that to the side for now? If you want to take 2 games on Thursday, go ahead. Whatever works.
So we'll see. All right. My first selection that I'm making with this one, who am I the most confident in actually winning this game is a big question for me. I will be picking one of the early games this week for my first pick. Let me just get that out the way. And in my oodles and oodles of research that I've totally done, and I'm not making any of this up on the fly, ladies and gentlemen. Give me the, let's start things off hot, hopefully. Give me the Detroit Lions to win their game against the Packers. They smoked them last time, and now this game is in Detroit, and they need to start getting wins. I know Denver, I know Minnesota just lost this past week, but I think if you're Detroit, I've talked about the next 3 weeks as big stretches of games for teams. If you're Detroit, you want to get these, try to pile up these wins going into the later portion of the season where you don't face the Vikings towards the end. You would love to try to get close to wrapping up that division before you even face Minnesota if you can.
I like that one. I think that's a very solid pick. And again, it's a team that hasn't had this good of a start to the season since 1962. So good on you for the Lions there. I am going to go with a team that has a pretty good track record of, playing on Thanksgiving. And last year, they won for the first time in 3 or 4 years. And so this is where it gets tricky because I'm going to take Dallas over Washington as my 4-point pick. But Washington has beaten Dallas, I think, the last 2 times they've played on Thanksgiving Day. So the risk is that the Commanders seem to have the number of the Cowboys on the holiday itself. But I think this time around, I think that Dallas is going to be able to supersede that and keep themselves in a good position here. So I will take the Cowboys over the Commanders on my 4-pointer. So Justin, you now have back-to-back.
So the Cowboys are off the board and
the Lions.
The Lions
So
are
you still have the Niners and the Seahawks if you want that game from Thursday.
I think I will take that, but I am first going to take the Kansas City Chiefs over the Raiders.
Yeah, okay.
That will be my 4-point pick, and then I will take the 49ers to beat the Seahawks.
Okay. Yeah, it's going division. A lot of these games are divisional, I believe. So that's actually good on you there. Okay. All right. I like it. I'm at 3 now, and I'm it's funny because I played it safe last week with my 4 and my 3. And incidentally, I lost week 1, but ever since week 1, all my 3-point picks have hit. So I think I'm going to do what Justin did when he had his streak going. I'm going to pick a risky game as my 3-pointer. I'm going to go for an upset pick here. Because there's a lot of turmoil with one of these teams, and with the other team, you're trying either to not win because you want a better draft pick, or if you believe the ESPN playoff machine, there could still be a chance they could make the playoffs here. Give me the Giants at 3 and an upset over the Patriots. Because I do not know who's starting a quarterback for New England. I don't think they do. I don't think they do either. And I mean, I know they're coming off of a bye, and that's all well and dandy. But I mean, this, as we said, the Commanders' defense was something on the Giants. The Giants' defense was something on the Commanders too. And I think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to have another field day with whoever's back there. The Patriots' running attack with Ramondre Stevenson and Ezekiel Elliott is very questionable. And I mean, again, no Kendrick Bourne, so you're relying on Pop Douglas as your number 1 target. I don't see it. Give me the Giants over the Patriots at 3.
I don't blame you, to say the very least, on that one. Okay.
So Jerk, I don't know if you heard. I know you stepped out briefly, but Justin took Kansas City over Vegas at 4.
And he took San Francisco, right?
San Francisco, yep, over Seattle at 3, yeah.
I still hear you guys. It's just the video.
Oh no, yeah,
it's raining. It's raining here right now.
But I wasn't sure if you stepped away from the computer for a second, put your headphones down, so I wasn't quite sure.
No, I mean, it does take a little bit of effort to run outside, fix what's happening outside with the rain, and then come run back in. But
reasonable
with no water on me, by the way, because just
reasonable.
As I am an absolute goofball.
Well, there you go.
Which is the story of my life. All right, there's like 1 or 2 upsets that I am a fan of taking here. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to take them. Man, I'm scared of that Sunday night game because as much as I want to say, yeah, the Chargers should lose that game, I'm also like, man, the Ravens could even lose that game because they're so weird, man. They're so freaking weird when it comes to the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Hold on. As my phone fails me with my selections here. Give me, I know who my 2-point upset is, but I need to give my 3-pointer, of course, beforehand. because it would be weird to have back-to-back picks. You make the second pick first. No, that's not how it works. Give me the – man, this is a risk, but they better win this game. Give me the Dolphins with my 3-point pick. And give me a Florida special with this. And give me the Buccaneers for my 2-point upset.
Okay.
I'm actually a bigger fan. I'm a bigger fan of Baker than most. I think Baker's still going to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer at the end of the season. So I'll ride with Baker on this one.
So I'm going to take a 2-point flyer on an upset here that is, for some reason, an upset. I don't quite know why. Because have you seen who they're starting at quarterback in Atlanta? They're starting Desmond Ridder again. Give me New Orleans over Atlanta at 2 for my upset pick there. Because I don't know why Atlanta's favored in this game. I don't. Give me New Orleans.
That's a killer for me.
Yeah.
Do
you want me to read off what we got, or you have what you got?
I have everything. I just need to pick an upset game.
Yeah.
So now all the Thursday and Black Friday games are gone.
Correct.
The only 2 upsets that I have. Oh, you know what? I would take this one. I'm going to take the Browns beating the Broncos as my upset.
Okay.
I know that Russ has looked good the last couple of weeks. He did not have a turnover this past week. I don't think that stays consistent against the defense like the Cleveland Browns.
Right. And this is a nice statement game too. If it's the Browns that pull this off and they move to 8-3, that's a big statement for them. Mm-hmm. But also, if the Broncos do end up winning at 6-5, they're right in the thick of the hunt too. So this is a very big game for both.
It's a 5-game win streak.
Yeah, that's a very big game for both. All right. You have the 1-point selection now as well.
I do have the 1-point selection. So now I'm torn. And I'm torn between our 2 number 1 seeds. I'm going to take the home team. And I'm going to take the Eagles beating the Bills at home.
Worked out so well for you last week. The Eagles got you your first place nod. So
that's true. And I want to say that the Ravens are going to just blow out the Chargers in LA. But I don't know. Something about them being on the road going west bothers me right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. See now I'm in a bit of a pickle here because, well, it doesn't really matter. It's 1 point, as I always say. 1 point, what does it matter at the end of the day? I'm down by 3, so what does 1 point matter? But I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting because I'd love to pick against Tennessee, but at an even week, and I don't know if that still holds true to form. I don't think it does. But
I think we lost that by like
5 or 6. I think we did, but it was funny. It was funny what happened. I think what I'm actually gonna do is I'm going to take a bit of a risk, and I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals over the LA Rams at 1 point, and another little upset there. Kupp is still banged up a little bit, and I know that he's probably out this week, so they're relying more on Nakua and Atwell, and I think while it's all well and good, Arizona is they're 2-8.
Yeah.
But they don't play like they're 2-8. They play like a 500 team.
2-9, by the way.
2-9, thank you. But they play like a 500 team. And I don't know, something about Kyler Murray in this scenario, I think, works out well. It was close last week. I picked them and they didn't beat Houston. But, will I learn from my past mistakes? No, of course not. And why? It's 1 point. Doesn't matter. So give me Arizona here at 1. I think I like this matchup for the Cardinals, and we'll see what happens. So,
all right. I know. So my remaining games, and if I'm missing one of them, please update me. So these are the games that we have remaining
Yes.
that I can pick from. So Bears Vikings on Monday night.
Yep.
Ravens Chargers Sunday night.
Yep.
Bills Eagles.
Nope. Bills Eagles is gone.
Oh, Bills Eagles is gone. Oh,
Justin took it at 1.
My bad. I was confusing that with another game on this. That is, you already picked Saints Falcons. Yes. Steelers Bengals.
Yep.
And I'm missing at least one or two. Oh, Jaguars Texans.
And Panthers Titans is still on the board as well.
Ah, yes. That's the one I confused with the Eagles game being gone.
Makes sense.
Definitely does not, but okay. So I would like my day on Sunday to be semi-relaxed as I am coming back to, as I'll be traveling that day. So for that, I would prefer to pick between Steelers, Bengals, and Jags, Texans. And
you could also take the Panthers over the Titans.
I could, but as much as I hate the Titans, the Panthers have disappointed me very thoroughly.
Very fair.
So give me the Steelers with a win there. They just fired their offensive coordinator. They got to win this one.
You think so?
I mean, when you fire a guy that's supposed to be the problem, and if it's still a problem, maybe it's a little bit more than just the guy. So you got to win this one if you're Pittsburgh, just to help your situation out here.
That's reasonable. I think that's reasonable. Let me just fill in the selections for Billy at the moment, and I'll tell you what he's doing very, very soon. Okay, we are ready to go. So what he's going to do here is he will go with the Vikings at 4 over the Bears. He will take the upset of Carolina over Tennessee at 3. Baltimore over the Chargers at 2. And he likes the Texans at 1. So he'll take that upset over the Jaguars at 1. So that being said, those are picks for our last place mascot, who barely shows up to work, but still collects a fake paycheck. For the rest of us,
we're paying him?
Fake paycheck. Paycheck. It's one of those like Publishers Clearinghouse like big paychecks. It's like, Coroplast. For the rest of us, Jurg, your picks are the Lions over the Packers at 4 on Thanksgiving Day. The Dolphins over the Jets at 3 on Black Friday. Your upset special, Tampa Bay over Indianapolis at 2. And Pittsburgh over Cincinnati at 1. For myself, I go with the Thanksgiving Day victory of Dallas over Washington at 4. The Giants over the Patriots at 3. The Saints over the Falcons at 2. And the Cardinals over the Rams at 1. So in your scorebook, mark it down. That's 3 upsets at 3, 2, and 1. Justin goes Kansas City over Vegas at 4. The Thanksgiving game of San Francisco over Seattle at 3. His upset is Cleveland over Denver at 2. And then Philadelphia over Buffalo at 1. The Eagles, around you, gave him the first place nod after getting the win last week. So he's sticking with the hot hand that allowed him to usurp the throne, if you will. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't blame Justin at all because it was, I'm pretty sure it was the 49ers who I rode last season as my hot hand. So if you got a team, stick with it, man. Stick with it. Justin's out for revenge this season, and he's on a good path for it.
Yeah, listen, I think it's anybody but you, Jerk. That's what we're okay with.
If I start getting a run here, it's not just going to be anyone but me. If I can hit a run here, then it's going to be dangerous territory for you.
Well, yeah, but somehow some team always seems to, just muck with an M, Justin. Things up for you.
So. Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. But at some point, my luck has to turn. Now, I've been saying that my entire life, and it may never happen, but I'm hopeful at some point it is going to turn around.
I suppose that's fair.
So that being said, that completes yet another edition of the #SAOC Pick Challenge, guys, a Thanksgiving edition, a Chaos After Dark edition of it yet again. Fantastic episode, but there's one last thing we must do before the end. Rick, rant for the people as we head into the amazing holiday of eating food and watching football.
There are 3 things in life that I know are certain right now before I even get to my podium. My dog is asleep, my daughter's asleep, and James Harden's overrated. So, with that being said, number 3 on my rant podium this week, I promise you folks that my number 1 does have something to do with Thanksgiving, but there are 2 things that really bug me that are going to take my number 3, number 2 spot here. Number 3, when you're playing any sport and you argue with the referees in a certain way, you're going to get basically technical foul, Draymond Green, or worse. So what Serginho Dest did over last night in the U.S. men's national soccer team's loss to Trinidad and Tobago, which didn't hurt them because they qualified for Copa America, to me is the embodiment of why we fail in American sports. Serginho Dest did not agree with a call from the Guatemalan referee in the game, decided to stall the game by kicking the soccer ball into the stands, incurring a yellow card, and then continued to argue with the referee about a call that he didn't get minutes prior, despite Tim Ream, Matt Turner, and basically every U.S. men's soccer commentator telling him to STFU and go play the game. And he got a red card. And so what that means is that he is now out for the semifinal of the Copa America tournament. I personally believe he should be off the starting 11 and off the U.S. men's national team because soccer players get a bad rap. I mean, they get a fair rap because they're babies, but it's a bad rap. Like, you know, if you get tackled and you sprawl and fall like an actor, so be it. But what Serginho just did is the definition of entitled brat. I think that's what his name actually means in English. Serginho Dest is, I think, entitled brat in English, or whatever language you want to translate it to. But don't be like him, kids of today. Don't be like him. Like, you're gifted a golden opportunity to play on a very prominent national team. You should, embrace that and be a team player instead of being a diva like James Harden. Just, putting it out there too. Number two, this has bothered me for a while, but it kind of, just got to me now. I want to talk about drugs, but not in that kind of way. Like, have you ever seen commercials for like medication? And I'll give you a perfect example. Sky Rizzy, for example. Have you ever seen commercials for Sky Rizzy on TV or heard them on the radio? And once they say the name of the medication, they say something after that, which sounds like complete and total gibberish. Because the marketing name for a drug versus the medical name for a drug are two wildly different things in English. So, for example, Sky Rizzy, perfect example here. The medical name for the drug is Rizum Kism as Rizza, which to me sounds like a really terrible hocus pocus spell. Like, what? Why can't we just have the one name be the name? Why can't it just be Sky Rizzy? Why do we have to get all these other ingredients together? I'm sure chloroform was called Wappadoodle or whatever it was back in the day. Like, there's no real need for excess stupidity. And I understand, medical terminology is one of those things where it's like, the minute you start using it, you already feel in a sense of entitlement and hoidiness because no one's going to understand a word you say unless you're in that profession. But you're on TV, you're marketing Viagra to 40-year-old men who are watching football on a Sunday. Or the best part that I saw was that it wasn't the marketing for Viagra, it was the marketing for the menopause drug. So it was, hey guys, is your wife being a real B word right now? Maybe she's going through menopause. Here's a drug that can help her do that. Tell her about it. Watch what happens. I think we know what would happen, by the way. It wouldn't go very well for the guys in that situation. But, they're trying. And number one, so I want to talk about Thanksgiving because one of the things that I thought about was, how much food goes on the Thanksgiving table when we're together with our family. The meat, the sides, the accompaniments, the accoutrements, if you will. Whether you're like turkey or ham or mashed potatoes, stuffed potatoes, sweet potatoes, what have you. There is one dish that doesn't belong on the Thanksgiving table. I know what you're thinking. It's not bread. Bread is okay. But bread, the one dish that doesn't belong on the Thanksgiving table, and I've never seen this on my tables, thank goodness, but if somebody brought this to my Thanksgiving dinner, I would pick the plate up and throw it in their face and kick them out of the house, is ambrosia salad. If you've never heard of ambrosia salad, here are the ingredients for ambrosia salad. Drained pineapple chunks, drained mandarin oranges, drained maraschino cherries, Cool Whip, Greek yogurt, sweetened flaked coconut, and miniature marshmallows. What? In the old days of SNL, there was a skit that was called Stand Up and Win. They were making fun of Jerry Seinfeld. And Adam Sandler's character, because he botched the segment completely, but he had one line that he just kept saying because it was the only thing that he knew how to say. Who are the ad wizards that came up with this product? Because I want to meet them and tell them, what are you doing? Like, I understand you want to make a fruit salad and all of that, but when you throw in Cool Whip and marshmallows and coconut into this, it's like you didn't know what side of the tropical island you wanted to go to, so you just stuck it right in the middle and called it a day. This should have been left on the island in Castaway instead of Wilson. Bring back the volleyball, put this on the island instead. It's awful. Yeah, you know what? In Survivor, this is Survivor. Eat a whole bowl of this, and then you'll win the $1 million instead of going to Fiji, for all intents and purposes. Put this on the debate stage in 2024. Have Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley debate a bowl of ambrosia instead of this. Come on now.
They might lose that.
We all would lose.
Yeah.
We all would lose because it's politics and it's a bad side dish for Thanksgiving. So if you have the audacity to think about making ambrosia salad or bring it to my table or any table, just stop for a minute and think to yourself, maybe I can do better than this. Maybe that French baguette's not the worst thing on the table instead. Or maybe those turnips aren't the worst thing I could bring. Hell, I'll even bring a damn radish if I want to, with the stem still on it instead of ambrosia salad. Give me a break. You know who likes ambrosia salad? Adam Rank.
I knew it.
Yeah, he loves it. And I've heard this rumor too, by the way. Ambrosia is going to be the next thing that Dunkin' will sell because Dunkin' sucks. So to all of you out there, have a happy Thanksgiving from myself, from all the medical wonks out there, from all the red card giving referees, and please do me a favor, get the damn ambrosia off my Thanksgiving table.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no better way to head off into Thanksgiving than don't have ambrosia salad. I don't think anyone planned on having it. And after this rant, I don't think anyone ever will. I nearly lost my appetite for my dinner right now after that. But thankfully, I'm still hungry enough to where I will eat, ladies and gentlemen. That being said, thanks so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Ages of Chaos podcast. Chaos After Dark number 3 of this season. Won't be the last one, I promise you that. The Thanksgiving edition. Fun football chaos. We always say is the tagline of the show. And Thanksgiving always has fun and always has chaos. Football there as well. Let's all enjoy just a wondrous, wondrous holiday as we head into the final month and a half or so of the season where things are really going to start to pick up. What will the Picks Challenge look like after this? Who knows? You'll have to find out next week. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys post-Thanksgiving. Take care, everyone.